Chapter 20 of A Dog Crusoe and His Master. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This reading by Allison Hester of Athens, Georgia. The Dog Crusoe and His Master by R.M. Ballantyne. Chapter 20. New plans. Our travelers join the fur traders and see many strange things. A curious fight, a narrow escape, and a prisoner taken. Not long after the events related in the last chapter, our four friends, Dick and Joe and Henry and Crusoe, agreed to become for a time members of Walter Cameron's band of trappers. Joe joined because one of the objects which the traders had in view was similar to his own mission, namely the promoting of peace among the various Indian tribes of the mountains and plains to the west. Joe, therefore, thought it a good opportunity of traveling with a band of men who could secure him a favorable hearing from the Indian tribes they might chance to meet within the course of their wanderings. Besides, as the traders carried about a large supply of goods with them, he could easily replenish his own nearly exhausted pack by hunting wild animals and exchanging their skins for such articles as he might require. Dick joined because it afforded him an opportunity of seeing the wild, majestic scenery of the Rocky Mountains, and shooting the bighorn sheep which abounded there, and the grizzly bars, as Joe named them, or Caleb, as they were more frequently styled by Henry and the other men. Henry joined because it was agreeable to the inclination of his own rollicking, blundering, floundering, crashing disposition, and because he would have joined anything that had been joined by the other two. Crusoe's reason for joining was single, simple, easy to be expressed, easy to be understood, and commendable. He joined because Dick did. The very day after the party left the encampment where Dick had shot the grizzly bear and the deer, he had the satisfaction of bringing down a splendid specimen of the bighorn sheep. It came suddenly out from a gorge of the mountain and stood upon the giddy edge of a tremendous precipice at a distance of about 250 yards. "You could not hit that," said a trapper to Henry, who was rather fond of jeering him about his short-sightedness. "None," cried Henry, who didn't see the animal in the least. "Say you dat? We shall see." And he let fly with a promptitude that amazed his comrades, and with a result that drew from them peals of laughter. "Why, you have missed the mountain." "Oh, non, that am impossible." It was true, nevertheless, for his ball had been arrested in its flight by the stem of a tree not 20 yards before him. While the shot was yet ringing, and before the laugh above referred to had pealed forth, Dick Varley fired, and the animal, springing wildly into the air, fell down the precipice, and was almost dashed to pieces at their feet. This Rocky Mountain or bighorn sheep was a particularly large and fine one, but, being a patriarch of the flock, was not well suited for food. It was considerably larger in size than the domestic sheep, and might be described as somewhat resembling a deer in the body and a ram in the head. Its horns were the chief point of interest to Dick, and truly they were astounding. Their enormous size was cut out of all proportion to the animal's body, and they curved backwards and downwards, and then curled up again in a sharp point. These creatures frequent the inaccessible heights of the Rocky Mountain, and are difficult to approach. They have a great fondness for salt, and pay regular visits to the numerous caverns of these mountains, which are encrusted with a saline substance. Walter Cameron now changed his intention of proceeding to the eastward, as he found the country not so full of beaver at that particular spot as he anticipated. He therefore turned towards the west, penetrated into the interior of the mountains, and took a considerable sweep through the lovely valleys on their western slopes. The expedition which this enterprising fur trader was conducting was one of the first that ever penetrated these wild regions in search of furs. The ground over which they traveled was quite new to them, and having no guide, they just moved about as haphazard, encamping on the margin of every stream or river on which signs of the presence of beaver were discovered, and setting their traps. Beaver skins, at this time, were worth 25 shillings apiece in the markets of civilized lands. And in the snake country, through which our friends were traveling, thousands of them were to be had from the Indians for trinkets and baubles that were scarce worth a farthing. A beaver skin could be procured from the Indians for a brass finger ring or a penny looking glass. Horses were also so numerous that one could be procured for an axe or a knife. Let not the reader, however, hastily conclude that the traders cheated the Indians in this traffic, though the profits were so enormous. The ring or the axe was indeed a trifle to the trader, but the beaver skin and the horse were equally trifles to the savage, who could procure as many of them as he chose with very little trouble, while the ring and the axe were in his estimation of priceless value. Besides, be it remembered, to carry that ring and that axe to the far distant haunts of the red men cost the trader weeks and months of constant toil, trouble, anxiety, and, alas, too frequently cost him his life. The state of trade is considerably modified in these regions at the present day. It is not more justly conducted, for in respect of the value of goods given for furs, it was justly conducted there, but time and circumstances have tended more to equalize the relative values of articles of trade. The snow, which had prematurely fallen, had passed away, and the trappers now found themselves wandering about in a country so beautiful and a season so delightful that it would have seemed to them a perfect paradise, but for the savage tribes who hovered about them. They soon passed from the immediate embrace of stupendous heights and dark gorges to a land of sloping ridges which divided the country into 100 luxuriant vales, composed part of woodland and part of prairie. Through these numerous rivers and streams flowed deviously, beautifying the landscape and enriching the land. There were also many lakes of all sizes, and these swarmed with fish, while in some of them were found the much sought after and highly esteemed beaver. Salt springs and hot springs of various temperatures abounded here, and many of the latter were so hot that meat could be boiled in them. Salt existed in all directions in abundance, and of good quality. A sulphurous spring was also discovered, bubbling out from the base of a perpendicular rock 300 feet high, the waters of which were dark blue and tasted like gunpowder. In short, the land presented every variety of feature calculated to charm the imagination and delight the eye. It was a mysterious land, too, for broad rivers burst in many places from the earth, flowed on a short space, and then disappeared as if by magic into the earth from which they rose. Natural bridges spanned the torrents in many places, and some of these were so correctly formed that it was difficult to believe they had not been built by the hand of man. They often appeared opportunely to our trappers, and saved them the trouble and danger of fording rivers. Frequently the whole band would stop in silent wonder and awe as they listened to the rushing of waters under their feet, as if another world of streams and rapids and cataracts were flowing below the crust of the earth on which they stood. Some considerable streams were likewise observed to gush from the faces of the precipices, some 20 or 30 feet from their summits, while on the top no water was to be seen. Wild berries of every kind were found in abundance, and wild vegetables, besides many nutritious roots. Among other fish, splendid salmon were found in the lakes and rivers, and animal life swarmed on hill and dale. Woods and valleys, plains and ravines teemed with it. On every plain the red deer grazed in herds by the banks of lake and stream. Wherever there were clusters of poplar and elder trees and saplings, the beaver was seen nibbling industriously with his sharp teeth, and committing as much havoc in the forests as if they had been armed with the woodman's axe. Otters sported in the eddies. Raccoons sat in the tree tops. The marten, the black fox, and the wolf prowled in the woods in quest of prey. Mountain sheep and goats browsed on the rocky ridges, and badgers peeped from their holes. Here, too, the wild horse sprang, snorting and dishevelled, from his mountain retreats, with flourishing mane and tail, spanking step, and questioning gaze, and thundered away over the plains and valleys, while the rocks echoed back his shrill